Give us one sec, RJ. We were a little bit of a technical difficulty here. Hey, RJ, we got to restart this thing real quick. You're gonna probably have to. We're gonna close this thing down, and you're probably gonna have to rejoin. So just I'll text you when to rejoin here in a minute or so. Few technical difficulties. We will restart here in momentarily in 2 minutes, hopefully. All right. Looks like he's back on. All right. Countdown. Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast. Welcome back to another edition of Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast. It is Thursday. This is episode 95. That's Chuck McCarthy, Matt Roy. Usually we have a background right here, but for some reason we are having those technical difficulties, and it has gone away, even though you can kind of still see it. It's like really, really light. Anyway, it is Thursday, April 25th, as we all famously know, the perfect date. Luis? Take the miscongeniality soundbite.
Your perfect date.
It's a tough one.
William Shatner.
I'd have to say April 25th because it's not too hot, not too cold. All you need is a light jacket.
That was filmed right here in San Antonio. So.
And our very own Kimberly Crawford has a cameo in, I believe, the second movie.
But yeah, that's what I think of when I think of April 25th. I think our guest actually tweeted that out a little earlier today, too. So we got a lot going on. All kidding aside, we will be all in on the NFL draft. Yes, pun intended, for Jerry Jones. To do that, we're going to bring in our very special guest. He is the manager and editor-in-chief of Blogging with the Boys. You can also hear him every morning from 6 to 10 a.m. with Rob Thompson on 94.1. San Antonio Sports Star in the Morning Huddle. RJ Ochoa. RJ, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, fellas. Happy April 25th. Happy, final day of commiseration, I suppose, for the Cowboys. It's been a long few months, so it's nice to know that we're Andy Dufresne on the other side of this thing.
Yeah, but we're gonna have maybe commiseration done, but misery to follow. We'll see how it goes tonight, I guess. So RJ, you get to participate in the game that we do every episode we start. So this is episode 95. We ask, what does the number 95 remind you of in sports? So when you think of the number 95, is it a jersey number? Is it something that happened in 1995? What do you think of when you think of the number 95?
Yeah, that was the last Dallas Cowboys Super Bowl. It's super easy, right? Super easy to kind of, I don't know if that was fortuitous or if that was purposeful, but the drought is almost 30 years old. And if they don't win the Super Bowl this year, they will officially reach that, obviously, because they'll have to go at it in 2025. So good times, certainly, 1995.
Yep, 1995. Also, I think of Richard Dent. Richard Dent, the longtime Bears player, Bears Hall of Famer. Myles Garrett for you over there. Bob, our digital guy. He's a big Cleveland Browns fan. We'll think of Myles Garrett for him.
Aggie. He's an Aggie.
He is an Aggie. Also, yours truly, born in 1995. So,
wow.
We should all think of Matt Roy when we think of number 9.
I got warts older than you, dude.
I didn't need to know that, but all right. Also happening in 1995, Braves won the World Series, 4-2 over the Indians. The MVP, Tom Glavine. Cal Ripken Jr. broke the consecutive game record held by Lou Gehrig, 21-30, a record that will never be broken, right, Chuck?
Probably not. I can't imagine that it would be, but records, as you know, are made to be broken. But quick aside to Cal Ripken Jr., during the build-up to that, they're playing in Arlington, and in between cuts in the cage, Cal Ripken Jr. would sign as many autographs as he could for the throngs of people that were lined up to get them, because that was a huge story at the time. And again, what a great ambassador for baseball.
Absolutely. Let's get to some Cowboy talk. So Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones, Mike McCarthy all held their pre-draft presser on Tuesday. It was nothing if not entertaining. It was an hour long, and there was a lot of scribbles on, I think, an email, whatever that was, that Jerry was was scribbling on. But one of the biggest takeaways for me, at least, was that completely unprompted, Jerry Jones decided to double, triple, quadruple down on his all-in take. So let's hear that real quick.
The question is, in my mind, about all of this, how do we feel about where we've been in this free agency? We feel great about what we've been in free agency. All in. All in. All in. We're all in with these young guys coming up. And we're all in with this draft. And we're all in with knowing that you have to go.
RJ, that's 6 all-ins in like 15 seconds. My favorite part of that was that you could hear Steven laughing behind him or next to him, just sounded uncomfortable. Like, why are you doing this to us again? So RJ, what do you think? What did you think when you heard that right at the beginning of the presser?
I mean, it's kind of become, I think, the label for the dysfunction that the offseason has been for them. And I don't know, I personally don't know anybody who took the original statement seriously. I think everybody kind of took it with several grains of salt and said kind of, we'll see, whatever. But it became this sort of motto and this decree as their reluctance to participate in free agency wore on. And so I mean, my personal vibe and my personal kind of temperature of the fan base is that, I mean, you mentioned the clip, obviously, that was like in the opening 30 seconds of things. And so it almost felt kind of spiteful, towards people who have thrown it in their faces over the last few months, kind of, we're allowed to say and do whatever we want, and you all just kind of have to deal with it. And I don't mean to make it that dramatic, but it felt a little dry and it felt a little uncomfortable because it has been a dry and uncomfortable thing over the course of the entire offseason.
Chuck, what did you think when you heard that? Because he's right. It was within like the first minute of the press conference. He let Steven answer the first question, and then Jerry chimes in with that.
Yeah, I took it as kind of clarifying what we were spitballing last week, which was all in to them means it's time to let some of these younger guys go out and let's see what they can do. I mean, right now, we know them as the Dak Cowboys, the CD Cowboys, the Micah Cowboys. At some point, they're going to have to let this be the Sam Williams Cowboys, the DeMarvion Overshown Cowboys, the Malik, I'm trying to, who's the guy?
The Mozzie Smith Cowboys.
Yes.
DeMarvion Overshown.
Yes. Those kinds of guys. And it's time to let some of these younger guys go play to be the next stars of the team because they've put themselves into this position with the guys that they're paying. I mean, 4 or 5 guys are making 70% of what this roster looks like. And so because of the sins, which Jerry brought up, and living on the credit card, which Jerry has brought up, this is how, unfortunately, this is their bed. Now they have to embrace their bed and hopefully don't whiff on some of these younger guys because they're really going to be counted on throughout the course of the season.
When I heard that, I definitely thought it was a little bit of like, stop asking us about this all-in statement that I made at the end of January. RJ, to your point, it did seem a little bit like spiteful, for lack of a better term, but like, this is what I meant. Now shut up, stop asking about this, even though he decided to say it 6 more times within the next 15 seconds.
I honestly don't think that they meant anything. I don't think, I think we've tried to decipher and tried to, like in whatever it was, season 2 of Lost, when they found like the numbers and they were like, what does this mean? Like, is this a combination to something, or is this a code to get into some magic door or whatever? I don't think it meant anything. I think it was something that Jerry said, and because this is sports and because of the Cowboys, it just blew up. And should he and they have known that? Obviously, absolutely. Would he undo it if he could? Probably not, would be my guess, because of all the attention that it created. But I mean, I think that they, so many people have tried to assume they're doing this, they're doing that. And that's why I'm excited for the draft, obviously, because it will finally give us a bit of a North Star to kind of point to in terms of where they've been going and what they're chasing here in 2024 specifically. But I think it was a random statement that they didn't, I think they, if anything, they underestimated how mad people were. And I think that they underestimated how big of a piece of chum this was that they were throwing in the water, and that they didn't, Jerry at least didn't recognize that this, people were really hurt, because this was originally said, something like 10 days after the season ended. It was still a really raw thing.
Right.
And so to offer any kind of, hope just wound up being really cruel. And so I think people didn't forget that easily.
Doesn't it seem like it was said, I think it was January 30th, right at the Senior Bowl. And it was like almost a throwaway line, but I think everyone was trying to grasp onto something like, what are they going to do now that it's like, okay, we're all in. Awesome. Jerry's all in. We're going to do some awesome things now. We're going to pick up some players that we need. We're going to try and shore up the offensive line. We're going to try and shore up the D line. We're going to replace older guys that might leave. We're going to really push our chips in the middle of the table. And then coming here 3-4 months later now, they've signed like 2 free agents, Royce Freeman and Eric Kendricks. And
they kept Jordan Lewis too.
And you're just like, what the hell did you mean then? What do you mean all in? So I think it was just like frustrating.
They're not a team, obviously, that's well known for being active at this time of year, and that's fair to say. So anyone who expected them to be would have been deviating from historical norm. But so within that context, they've been particularly inactive. So if there was ever a year to offer this claim, whether it was genuine or not, this was not the one. And so it again, I think, was probably just an unfortunate series of events that maybe everybody outside of Jerry wishes didn't happen. But I will say, aside from the particular verbiage of all in, the overall press conference was not so much, in my mind, a discussion about the draft and a discussion about their capital and the moves they intend to make throughout the weekend, but more of a defense. It felt like they really felt like they were on trial for what they have done or haven't done over the last few months, and they were trying to defend it to a lot of people. And again, my personal read of the fan base is that nobody really bought anything that they had to say so far.
It was also interesting a little bit later in the press conference that Jerry completely acknowledged that this team is only going to get worse. And that's the second bite that I pulled up here.
So Dak has enjoyed in his career that we're proud of some of the best supporting cast that you could put around him. And to move forward, we're going to have to diminish that. That's a fact. That's the rules. And so that's our challenge, and to make it work out. Dak, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, I don't even have I can't even blink on that one.
To me, it sounded like he was trying to warn the fan base, like, this is only going to get worse from here. These were the best teams that we're going to have. Now we're going to have to pay Dak north of $60 million, and we want him here. We don't want to go chase another quarterback, but we're not going to have what we used to have. And it's like, maybe that was a good thing that he's warning everybody, but that's how I took it. RJ, how did you take that?
I think that it's, I don't mean to just be negative. I really would love to be positive and really would love to kind of buy into some of these things. But I think if anything, it's a veil of security for if and when they don't do anything, to kind of lean back and sit back and say, hey, we told you, this was going to be rough. And it's totally true that, they're going to have to, if they want Dak obviously to play for them, they're going to have to pay him somewhere, in the approximate value of $60 million per year. And I think the frustrating thing about this is, this was said, I agree with you, from the perspective of, here's your medicine, you have to kind of take it, it's good for you, when it didn't have to be this way. It didn't have to be $60 million. It didn't have to be this late in the game. You didn't have to wait till the 11th hour. Had you done this sooner, you could have reaped the benefits from that, and you could have signed players with the cap space that it would have created. You could have gone about this in a completely and totally much more efficient manner. And had you done so, then nobody would have to sit here and take any kind of medicine. And so I think lecturing people on, hey, you have to kind of shut up and deal with this now is difficult for people to take when they know that this was among the more inefficient paths that they could have taken to get to this point.
Yeah, be that as it may, though, this is the bed that they have made. So now what do? You have to pivot, right? And I think a lot of where this is going is obviously because they have to go this way. Their cap is what it is at this point. But all they have to do is look and see what Green Bay did, the team that knocked them out. And I talked about this a little bit last night. You have a team that traded its star quarterback and within a very short period of time flipped the entire operation. And I think some of this is the Cowboys getting a nudge on what beat them and what bounced them from the postseason last year. It can be done. It can be done quickly if you have a pretty good foundation in terms of younger players.
And where do you think that foundation is as we currently sit? Because a lot of those younger players are now going to be thrust into bigger roles because of the vets that left and basically left them now to step up.
Well, I'm curious to see what this means really long term for Dak, CD, and Micah. That's where I'm really curious because, again, if 4 or 5 guys are making 75% of your salary cap, then you have to be able to find diamonds in the rough in some of these other places. So, are they going to be able to give CD what he wants? Or are they going to go and do what Green Bay did? As soon as Rodgers got the bag, what happened to 17? They traded him to the Raiders. So, again, I don't know what's going to happen, but because this is the route they are taking, it's going to be interesting to see how they now proceed with some of these guys that are and have earned the right to make big money.
And that does bring us to, oops, we're going to play it again. Dang it. That brings us to today, with the chimes that will send chills down your spine in the NFL draft. The NFL draft starts in just about 6 hours or so, 5.5 hours or so. The Cowboys won't be on the clock here for a while, but it brings us to the Cowboys have to hit on this draft because of the moves that they have not made, right, RJ?
Yeah, this was always going to be the most important day of the offseason for the Cowboys, whether they had been super active in free agency or not. Today, the 24th overall pick, as it currently stands for them at least, is the most important and most valuable asset that they have to their name. So how they spend it is really, really important. Obviously, the lack of free agency activity only exacerbated that. And so I think the day is fascinating, not just from the perspective of who they do or who they don't pick, but to Chuck's point, would I agree? I'm not putting words in your mouth, Chuck, about whether they should trade CD or whatever, the way the Packers did Devontae Adams. But today will show us something, because if you truly believe in having to rebuild, if you truly believe in wanting to move on, if you truly believe in needing to hit the reset button, again, we can all sit here and disagree or agree with that mindset. But then trade CD, then trade Micah. Today is your last moment to do anything like that, to accrue the necessary capital to start over. Because if not, you prolong that ability for an entire year, because the draft is obviously beginning in earnest tonight. So if they just sit and pick, I would assume right now that they're going to address the offensive line, and they'll tell us tonight finally how they feel about Tyler Smith, whether they view him as a left tackle, or they view him as an interior lineman, if they address the center position, and if they forego the offensive line altogether. And some of that might not be their fault. Some of it might just be the way the board falls. But if they walk away from tonight without a new offensive lineman, it will really make the trenches a difficult proposition for them, just because of a lack of talent for 2024.
That's fair. Just as far as I'm concerned, I think CD has positioned himself to get paid. I think the Cowboys have said it repeatedly. They like to pay their own. I think CD is going to get paid, but what does this mean for Dak then long term? Because Dak got his bag. Now it's time for CD to get his.
I live under the philosophy that receivers are replaceable, so I wouldn't pay CD, but that's just me. When we hear the chimes tonight, and the Cowboys are, I got a new button, so I just need to keep pressing it. When that sound comes on and the Cowboys are picking at 24, whether they trade up, trade back, or whatever, I fully expect them to go offensive line. It's not going to be a sexy pick. It's going to be a Tyler Guyton. It's going to be a Talisi Fuaga. It's going to be somebody like that you're not going to be like, oh, yes, offensive line. But it's going to be someone that can finally replace Tyron Smith and try and start getting younger, because Zach Martin's only getting older, and you finally need to figure out where Tyler Smith's going to play, even though there does seem to be some disagreement between Mike McCarthy and the higher ups about exactly where Tyler Smith's going to play. I think last time we heard it was at the owner meetings. Mike said that he's going to stick at guard, and then you had others that were like, maybe he'll move to tackle. So we're going to learn, to RJ's point, where exactly Tyler Smith's going to play, and we're going to learn exactly what the Cowboys are going to do with the first pick. But it makes the next 3 days, even more important. They don't have that 4th round pick anymore, so they have to hit on 1, 2, and 3, and you have to be judicial with your 5th, 6th, and 7th round picks now as well. They've left themselves with almost no margin for error today and this weekend.
Yeah, so Tankathon does a great job of ranking the capital that each team has to work with. And it's all based on the value of each pick. Obviously, the number 1 overall pick's worth the most, and so on and so forth. the overall collections of capital, the Cowboys have the 30th most valuable collection of the entire NFL. So, there's only two teams who they've got beaten. They're Miami and Cleveland. And obviously they've done a lot of wheeling and dealing to move picks away for different reasons. And so, I mean, tonight is super important, but obviously tomorrow's even more. That's why, if I had, my choice, if I was in Nirvana tonight, it would be a trade back scenario for the Cowboys because they need more picks. That's the situation that they put themselves in. I agree. There's no point in moaning and groaning. I mean, we're kind of here, but the best path forward is accruing and assessing a situation where you need more capital. They just don't have enough at this point in time, especially if you put any stock into the rumors that they want to spend a second-round pick on Jonathan Brooks or whatever the case may be. He might turn into a fine player, but your second-round pick is not something that you can take the chance in general, let alone in a year where you've put so much pressure on your draft class, in particular.
RJ, as we sit here today, how bad does the trade for Trey Lance look without that 4th-round pick? Seeing as that the other quarterbacks in that draft all got traded for 6th-round picks or a comparable value like that. How bad does that trade look right now?
The price that the other 2021 quarterbacks have gone for certainly hasn't helped, but the trade never made sense from the perspective of, the moment the trade happened, a lot of people, just jumped on the internet and were like, "Oh, watch out! This is the end of Dak Prescott." And maybe you believe that, but Trey's, unless the Cowboys pick up his 5th-year option, which they would be silly to do so because it's $24 million that's fully guaranteed for next year, he's set to enter the final year of his contract, and so is Dak Prescott. So this never made sense from a timeline perspective. Ideally, you would have traded for somebody that was drafted in 2022 that had, that extra year of overlap, that buffer to provide you if and when Dak Prescott does walk in free agency next year. But if you believe the Cowboys are committed to moving on from Dak Prescott next year, fine, let's live in that world. So he moves on, and the Cowboys then pivot and say, okay, we traded a 4th-round pick for Trey Lance 2 years ago. Let's make this work. And then you're Trey Lance, and that the Cowboys kind of have you as their primary option, that they're already invested in you from a draft capital standpoint, and that they want you more than anything else. Now you have all of the leverage. We go from a world where Dak has all the leverage to one where Trey Lance does. And I don't think Trey Lance would command somewhere around $60 million a year, but he would certainly command more than he would be worth in that moment because of the leverage of the situation. And so the trade was always silly from the perspective of it wasn't a forward-thinking thing. It provided no long-term benefit, especially given the fact that they did it in August. They didn't even get a chance to see him in training camp or the preseason. He is a complete and total unknown, and now they're down a 4th-round pick on Saturday.
And if you're looking at it from the holistic perspective here, and you're like, okay, a 4th-round pick we spent on a quarterback. I would rather have a 4th-round pick quarterback, a Michael Pratt or Spencer Rattler, whoever, insert quarterback this year's name here. I would rather have that person for 3 or 4 years than Trey Lance for a year and a half. I mean, it just doesn't make a lot of sense that they're going into this season with 3 quarterbacks that are free agents next year, and one of which was the project quarterback that you want to try and build up, see what he is, and he's a free agent next year too. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I mean, again, if it doesn't hit, it's not going to make a lot of sense. And right now, by all accounts, it's not working, right? Like I told you, I heard secondhand information that Trey Lance is struggling. So, yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, it's hard to argue what you guys just said.
With that being said, RJ, in the next 3 days, could you see them drafting a Michael Pratt, a Spencer Rattler, a Jordan Travis, so one quarterback maybe in the later rounds? I know they probably won't spend one in the 1st or 2nd, but maybe in the 3rd, 5th, 6th, 7th round, could you see them drafting a quarterback?
I mean, I would love. I think it's smart for NFL teams to draft a quarterback every year, just for the sake of development and the sake of playing the lotto over and over again. But I mean, we just talked about how precious these picks are, right? I mean, they have a lot of holes. They have a lot of areas to address. And in some ways, doing that is a luxury of being, a well-equipped roster. And even trading for Trey Lance, is not the worst thing ever if you're well-equipped and you have a long-term plan. Then you can kind of afford to, purchase that luxury, so to speak. But given the situation, given the bet that they've made, I just think it would be a really irresponsible thing to do to throw away, a 3rd-round pick or a 4th-round pick. I mean, you want to throw your last pick of the draft at one, you want to, get ahead of undrafted free agency, then maybe so be it. But I just don't think, and then you're going to carry 4 quarterbacks on your roster. I mean, how's that going to work? I mean, it invites a lot of questions that I don't think that they're prepared to answer right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't think they're going to draft a quarterback. I live by the same philosophy you do when it comes to drafting maybe a young quarterback in the later rounds every year just to see if they can be a Brock Purdy or if they can be, a Tom Brady, or see what happens.
Or Dak Prescott.
Or Dak
who
Prescott.
went
There
in
you
the
go.
middle rounds.
Fourth
Yeah.
round pick. So I just the box that the Cowboys have put themselves in will never make sense to me. Chuck.
Oh, you put me on the spot. I mean, again, I think it goes back to what I said earlier. They've made their bed. Now, how do they make the best of what they need to do going forward? And again, I think Jerry brought it up. You have to embrace where you're at. So part of that being all in is embracing your fate and now trying to pivot as quickly as you can to keep a viable product on the field. And obviously, there's a lot more questions going into this year than there were last year. But let's also keep in mind, too, free agency isn't over. As soon as this draft is over, they've done very well post-draft the last few years, picking up guys like a J-Ron Curse, guys that have become pretty decent contributors. So the window on some of this free agency isn't quite closed yet.
So, RJ, if you were to go in to work on Monday and you're going on at 94.1 San Antonio Sports Star, 6 a.m., you're logging on with Rob Thompson, and if I was to ask you right now, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. What would cause you to go on air on Monday and say that the Cowboys had a great draft?
I think if they traded back tonight and maybe even tomorrow, I mean, if they walked away from this thing with 5 top 100 players, so 5 players drafted between tonight and tomorrow, if they got some consensus value by way of their picks on Saturday. I mean, the Saturday picks are throwing darts, and it's always a difficult proposition, but consensus value is never a bad thing. And more than anything, I think I would say I would love nothing more than for the Cowboys to do something to, sing a song about and throw a parade over. I mean, I just need them to do the bare minimum, and I will gladly, hoist them up. And so there's been a lot of chatter about how they're projected to receive so many compensatory picks next year because of all the free agents that they've let walk this year. And so, okay, great. Well, we know that. We know that you're going to, you're expected to receive some compensatory picks. That means you can play with your draft capital for next year. That means if there's somebody you really like and there's somebody who you circle because you identified the draft as the well to tap for talent for your roster, then I would like to see that. I would like to see an aggressive disposition, utilizing your 2025 capital and prove that everything really was symbiotic, prove that everything really was connected, that you specifically left that compensatory formula untouched so that you could tap into that draft capital and those future resources in the name of improving your roster right now. But if they just stand by and just pick, it was 3 years ago, they had, I think, 10 picks in the NFL draft in 2021. And we all thought, oh, surely they're going to package some of these to move up. There's just no way they're going to draft 10 times. There's no way 10 draft picks can make the roster. And they never traded up once. So I would love to see a bit of an aggressive mindset in certain instances utilizing future draft capital because they've planned for it specifically.
What about you, Chuck? If I was to ask you on Monday that they had a successful draft, what would that look like to you?
I'm hoping because maybe, everybody's talking about the number of quarterbacks that could go in the top 15 picks, what that might look like for the Cowboys where they're taking. Maybe they get somebody that you never thought of, a skill player that, you never saw coming because the amount of quarterbacks that went in this draft. I don't know. But I think I'm pretty much with RJ. I mean, just take a really good offensive lineman in the first round, play it safe. You got to build your fortress up front. And then it's interesting how other things tend to take care of itself once you build that base up front.
It's going to be an interesting night and an interesting weekend. RJ Ochoa of Blogging with the Boys, thank you so much for joining us on the Sneakers and Cleats podcast, man. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks to y'all for having me. Congratulations to Miss Rhode Island on winning that beauty pageant that year. It was a great time and a great moment in history.
Well played, RJ.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah. Thanks again, RJ. Appreciate you. So, Chuck, we wanted to, before we get out of here, talk about the local guys that could have a chance either tonight or this weekend. Can you just give me a couple of minutes on the local UTSA players, the UIWs of the world that might get drafted or go undrafted this week?
Sure. It looks like we're going to have about, if you count the Texas State guys, about 15 guys that have agents and that have thrown their name into the ring as quote unquote NFL prospects. We have 2 guys from the area here, and I count Cuero being one of them.
That's fair.
Because they're in our viewing area. Jordan Whittington from Texas has a really good chance to get drafted. More than likely a day 3 guy from what we understand. Millard Bradford from O'Connor High School and TCU, defensive back. Also is another guy that's draft eligible. Those are really the only 2. Well, I take that back. Brandon Matterson from UTSA as well, a defensive lineman. He's got a really good chance. I shouldn't say really good chance because I don't know, but he's got a chance to be a day 3 guy, but for sure is going to be a preferred free agent somewhere because everybody likes his size, his motor, great feet, all the above, super aggressive player, and he's working on his master's, so he's the whole package. UTSA, probably their best draft prospect this year is Joshua Cephas.
Yeah, as he should be.
I mean, yeah, to go out and have a 1,000-yard season, we've talked about this before, and really being the leader of that group, not having the benefit of 2 other guys, Zachary Franklin and JT Clark alongside him, to go out and have a year like that. And he did it against good teams too.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
big
was a
teams
new
like
conference
Texas
too,
and
so.
yeah. So as it was put to me on the scouting report from somebody that has nothing to do with Joshua Cephas's camp that's in the know, this is the quote: Joshua may have just effed around and found himself into a draft.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, he had a great season, and going through all the stuff that he has gone through, it was great to see someone like Joshua Cephas have the season that he did. I could see the Cowboys throwing number 252 at him, get him in the camp, and make sure he's not a preferred free agent, but make sure that you get him on your roster. You don't have to compete with everybody else if you draft them. So I could see him going in the late 7th round. And then Rashad Wisdom is another one that is hoping to get drafted. Hopefully his name gets said in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. But if it doesn't, I could see him getting to a camp as well.
You're right. I forgot about Rashad being one of our local guys that's eligible. Yep. UIW's got 4 guys. Texas State's got 4 guys. So we've got numbers. And to your point about the 7th round, that's always the interesting proposition for teams, because if you draft somebody, then you got to pay them for 3 years. So, the hope is for a lot of these teams, because if you have some questions about the player, you get him as a preferred free agent, you pay him all the money up front, and then hope he wows you, and then you have to worry about maybe having to pay him something later. But the bottom line is that's what's going to be interesting for some of these guys at the very end of this draft is, can they make enough of an impression with these teams that can't trade out of the 7th round for somebody to take a chance on them? And, I think Joshua's got the best chance of having that happen.
A lot of talent in the 2-1-0. I keep looking back. Like, this is just weird that it's like so dull right here. It's just strange.
It goes with the 2 guys doing the show.
Yeah, apparently we were purple there for a little while too. I don't know. It's some technical difficulties, but we thank RJ Ochoa for coming on. Bob, any questions from the YouTube or Facebook audience?
You answered all the questions that came in. Really, they were asking about Dak. How far can you take him? And I think you guys have addressed that over and over again. People saying they think that Dallas is in trouble. I think that's been huge. I
think we touched on that quite a bit.
Someone does agree they want to go and get Joshua Cephas.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, I'll be on Saturday. I will be glued to the TV screen. Hopefully, Joshua Cephas's name gets called in that 7th round. 6th, hey, get called in the 4th round. Just get called at all.
Or maybe by his hometown Houston Texans, who just like the Cowboys have. By the way, they have 3 of the top 87 picks. The Texans don't have a first rounder, but they're also, again, we talked about this the other day. I mean, the window is definitely opening for that franchise.
Absolutely. And I would be remiss if we did not give this shout out to Tim Duncan. It's his birthday today. Timmy D. So the big fundamental. How old is he turning?
48.
48 for Tim Duncan. I could probably still play.
Without a doubt.
May not be good as he once was, but he's as good once as he ever was. Just if we're going to keep going on the pop culture references here.
And the hair's never been better. So that's like cheese getting better with age.
Oh, his hair is fantastic now. It's like down to his shoulders.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
He's a handsome devil as an older dude.
He always has been. Bob, your Browns don't have a pick tonight, right? So you're just going to be, you hate the draft? Yeah. If I tried not to be overtly Bronco today, so I turned my head around. But if the Broncos don't draft a quarterback tonight, I don't think I'm watching the rest of the draft. So,
Dude, you're going to get a lot of people from the 2-1-0 that are going to be on the Bronco wagon now. You got 3 San Antonio guys on that roster.
that's true.
So.
That's true. I mean, someone actually showed the other day that it looked like what was it? Blue Mountain State's uniforms. And I was like, what the hell are you guys talking about? You guys ever see that show, Blue Mountain State? No.
Nope.
No. Oh,
Nope.
Come on. Yeah, might have been a low past your guys' time. Anyway, that's all we got for you today on the Sneakers and Cleats podcast. We have a huge shout out to RJ Ochoa for joining us, being one of our first. Actually, I think he was our first live guest, besides me remoting in once. I think he was our first live guest. It took us 95 episodes, but we finally got there. And I got my sound effects. So you can guarantee that I will be adding. I have 8 buttons here. There will be 8 sound effects there at some point. So I'll have plenty of ammo to annoy Don and Chuck with. What's your thought? You want to say something?
People are really going to tune in
For that, that's make sure you're here next time.
It'll be really good sound effects, guys. Okay, it'll be perfect. It'll be San Antonio centric. I might put a Jerry bite on there. What about the one like you can suck on that all week? We're gonna have to suck on that all week.
I know nothing of what you speak of.
You didn't don't remember Jerry saying that? We get to suck on that all week. Said that a couple years ago.
How about them Cowboys?
Look, I'll take your word.
I'll
for
put
it.
I'll put the how about them Cowboys on here. That's good. Anyway, sorry, I'm rambling now. That's all we got for you on the Sneakers Cleats podcast. Remember to download, rate, review, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, tell a friend, tell an enemy. Thanks one more time to RJ Ochoa. Happy birthday to Tim Duncan. Good luck to all of the 2-1-0 prospects. We will see you right back here on Monday to break it all down. See you then.